We are recording now. Hey, everybody, and welcome to Your Personal Record. It's the show where I, Adam Reale, talk to guests about music, about records, about basically anything that we want to talk about, anything that comes up during the conversation. Now, before I introduce our guest for this next episode, this is episode 14, by the way. No, episode 15. I'm screwing up left and right here. We went through the bar mitzvah. Then we had the 14. We're up to 15. Thank you. Episode 15 of Your Personal Record. It's amazing how time flies now that we are winding down with COVID. But anyway, the announcements here. If you like what you see, like and subscribe. We just recently hit 100 subscribers. It took me, months and months and months, but we're moving. We're going in the right direction. And make sure you comment. We had a whole lot of comments on the last one. The comments were just, like little chirps all over the place. Really great stuff. I want to know what you're thinking. But right now, I want to introduce today's guest. Now, friends, some of you, and from the conversations that I've had with other people, I have constantly talked about one of my favorite bands, not the Ramones, but they also begin with an R, the Reducers. They are from New London, Connecticut. Now, our guest today has a good hand in that band, in the label Rave On Records that the Reducers are on, as is Roger C. Reale. It's like a whole bunch of R's. It's like this big tongue twister R. So, friends, let's welcome to Your Personal Record, Richard Brukner. Hey, Richard.
Thanks for having me, Adam.
Hey, thank you. All right. So, I mean, there's so many questions that I have for you. You got that nice external mic there. And so you're going to come in crystal clear.
It's what I do. It's what I do.
So, well, all right. So tell us what you do.
What I do? Well, in the record world is Rave On Records is what I've been working on with the Reducers for many years. It's their label. They put their own records out starting in the early 80s. And, once I got involved with them much later on, I kind of thought, well, let's put out your records, but let's also try to put out some other stuff. So we did a little bit of that, and we're still doing a little bit of that, and quite a bit in the last year or so.
Well, I mean, the last year has been like a very fruitful time for the Reducers, even though it's not new recordings, but there's a couple of live shows that are out. And it's only out on Bandcamp. It's not, no hard copies.
We haven't done any hard copies for the live stuff. So I don't know if we have to go into the whole history of the Reducers, but they kind of, they started out in 1978 and finished up in 2012 when their bass player passed away. All original members for all of those years. And I think they thought, and to their credit, they thought, well, we're just not going to go on with different people. But we have a lot of tapes in the can, and it occurred to me that they still have a pretty active fan base. So I thought, well, we should put out some of these shows. So early on, we put out an early 80s show from before they even put out a first single of them playing essentially a keg party outdoors. And someone brought a boombox to the show, threw it up in a tree, hit play and record. And that's what we put out. We didn't mess around with it. We just made sure it sounded okay. No edits, everything that was on that tape was put out. And it's a lot of songs.
It wasn't cleaned up.
It was cleaned up to the degree that we made sure that there wasn't, a horrible popping sound that interrupted, but what you hear is pretty much, and we made sure, and it was mastered properly by Scott Anthony and at Storybook Sound, who I've been using a lot lately, doing a great job. And he just made sure everything was up to snuff, but you didn't change the nature of it by any means. What you hear is what was on that tape,
off a boombox in the early 80s.
And then more recently, for right around New Year's Eve, as a matter of fact, we put out a live concert from 2005 that was recorded at an Arlene's Grocery gig. It was recorded onto multi-track. There were some problems with the multi-track, and that required a lot of manual repair, and so that required a lot of time. But there was a lot of time this year.
Right.
So, so fixed it up, and it turns out it's just a tremendous show. Very, very well played, very exciting, and that came out, and uh, honestly, they've been getting more press and accolades for that thing in 2021 than they were getting when they were around. Go
I,
figure.
I was going to say that because I mean, I follow on social media, I follow the producers and I follow Rave On Records. And it seemed as though every day there was a new piece of a new article, a new write-up, a new review of that Orleans show. And it's like, wow. I mean, considering it's an old show, it's a defunct band,
Mhm.
and the reviews are gold.
It's great. Look, the more people know about it, the better. It doesn't hurt. I mean, I always kind of worried. I mean, we always worked pretty hard at making sure the catalog was available. It never went out of print. And I've always wondered whether or not that kind of hurt them as far as value or reputation, because they were always available. They were always there. And
Mhm.
some bands, fly off the face of the earth, and all of a sudden the records are going up in value like crazy. But I always figured, well, you know what? I would rather make sure that a fan could get a copy for $10, or a whole mess of fans could get copies for $10 than one person pays $500 somewhere along the line on the collector's market. That doesn't
I
make
mean,
sense to
certainly, if you look at the reducers on Bandcamp, there's like a $25 special. Not even a special. This is what it is. And what you're getting is, I mean, this is literally like what should be
me.
hundreds of dollars worth of music. I mean, the music is incredible, and you're getting original copies of the vinyl, the records.
Yeah, those are all analog. They sound as good as they can be.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, well, let's see. I have my reducers collection here. So let's see. They is part of that deal. You have the original.
Actually, no, that's not in the deal, because
Oh, the
that's not
down, but
there.
the download is the
The
download.
download is, yeah.
The
There's a
download.
download of
Okay.
that LP, so you get that in there. But that's
All
a great
right.
record.
Oh, this is an incredible record. I mean,
Show
every
the, show,
one of
show
their
the cover to that
records,
one. Yeah, that's the first one. That's
every
the
one is pure gold. This one's still in the shrink. I'm like crazy with my, with the stuff, and I don't take.
you
I
should
actually
unshrink. I've been meaning to tell you, you gotta take your records out of the shrink. Unplayed records are unhappy records, Adam.
no, I play them. But
Okay.
I store the sleeve goes in the back.
Okay.
So the sleeves, they're
Okay.
all.
As long as it's not just sealed and
I mean,
hermetically frozen in time.
some things are. I have a whole bunch of Ramones pressings that are still like, from like the mid '80s until they just called it quits.
I think
And,
they'd be happier if you played them. Your
well,
records.
I have open copies too. So but there's still sealed copies too. It's and
I do know.
it's a Michigas.
I do know.
If we can go there. All right. Let's see what else we have. So then there's not that one. There is Cruise to Nowhere.
The third LP.
All right. So wait. So Let Go is the second LP.
Let's Go is the second LP. Yeah, that's the one where they hit it pretty big. That was #1 record on CMJ. They were getting a lot of attention, playing amazing shows.
Then there's Cruise to Nowhere.
Third
So
LP.
Let's Go and Cruise to Nowhere are part of this Bandcamp, right?
Yeah.
And then there was a couple of singles. I don't have the single. And then there was a drums, bass, guitar.
Yep, great record from the 2000s. Yep.
And then the Roger C. Reale.
Yeah, the EP. They did that in 1989.
Now that we certainly have to move on to the reissue over here, but we'll move on to Roger when we're done with the reducers. So I mean, so these guys. So how did you get involved with them?
Okay, well, I grew up in New York, and I ended up going to college in New London, Connecticut, and I pretty much went to the school so that I could get in on the radio station that they had there. That was all I really wanted to do, was play records on the radio. And so, you know, you get in there, and there are local band. There was a stack of 45s, and you're trying to figure out the local scene. And there's this 45 that they had just put out, or put it out a year or so before, and it was local band. I'd listened to it. I remember listening to it in the station, in the production studio with my friend Ben. We had a stack of 45s. We were listening to it. We put it on, played it for 10 seconds, threw it away. Like, nah, that's local band. And then I saw them live, and you know, just the neurons started firing, and the electricity of seeing them live blew me away. And the idea of a local band being able to do that, not I mean, the crowds were good. The local crowds are nuts for them at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And I went back and I re-listened to that 45, got myself a copy as soon as I could, and then just got to know them. Two of the guys in the band did a radio show, so I got to know them that way. And I was always into recording and audio, so eventually I started doing a couple of demos here and there with them, and then it moved on to remixing a track for a compilation in the late 80s. And then it just moved on to starting to doing demos with them, and then recording properly. And then that's how we started working together.
And then your name and card ended up. Now I'm going to cover the numbers here, but
they're inactive numbers, I'm sure.
Well, you know, someone's got them, I guess. So now, I mean, so you had seen the Reducers certainly 10 years, at least 10 years before I did. I saw them in the early 90s at Continental.
Yeah.
And, you know, I mean, this is when I was going out to, there was like sort of like that track. It was Continental, Coney Island High, CBGB's, and then you'd head over a little to Arlene's and Acme, but Brownies. But that was pretty much the circuit. And the Reducers were on one night, never heard of them, popped in there. And I guess it was when Shinola had, right around, I guess, when it came out. And Hugh had tossed out a tape. I caught the tape, and I mean, was blown away by them live. Put the tape in, it was like, these guys are incredible. And that was, you know, some 25 years ago, give or take, probably more. And still one of my all-time favorites. Anyway, at some point I picked this up, and I can't tell you where I got this. It might have been the FMU record fair. And there's a little business card inside. Again, we'll cover up the numbers.
Yeah, handmade.
And there's Richard Bruckner. There's his name right there with a couple of now defunct phone numbers, but they might belong to someone. 718 numbers.
They're both 718. I don't know. I put 2 on there.
718. Maybe one was a fax. And I mean, what
if I'm not there, they can reach the other number. It'll work
right.
out.
It's the you know, that you need to get these. You need to order Shinola now. And what a great band and great albums. I mean,
agree on every front.
Yeah, it's just, you know, and for those that don't know, for those that are, you know, we missed some of the episodes where I've talked about them. I mean, it's a perfect blend of pub rock, punk rock, power pop. You know, I mean, did I nail that?
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong there. It's a great combination and amalgamation of great taste, very, very clever lyrics, great melodies. I mean, they put it all together in the right way, and they've managed to put some great records out. I agree with you completely.
And so, you know, now let's talk about your involvement with Roger C. Reale. Now, so Roger C. Let's bust this out here. So this one here, Radioactive. Now, this is not on the Rave On Records. Nope. It's on a different label.
Sure was.
Right? But the recent, now, do we call this not really a reissue, or how would you describe this one?
Well, I would call it's, you know, the CD. We put out a CD called The Collection that compiles the LP that you just held up with the the Radioactive LP with the black and white cover, along with Reptiles in Motion that you just held up.
Right.
So it's those 2 records together. Radioactive was released in 1978 on the Big Sound label out of Wallingford, Connecticut. Roger's label mates they were kind of inspired by Stiff Records and were trying to put together a label that had that spirit from where they were coming from. The other major name on that record is Van Duren. On that label was Van Duren, whose records have recently been reissued by Omnivore, and who had a documentary film about him. I don't know. It's very similar story to Roger. Roger had some different coals in the fire, so his story turned out a little differently. But the records were recorded at the same time. They shared the drummer. Hildy Michaels is on all of these tracks. I call it a reissue, because of Radioactive is the record that if people know who Roger is, they know that record. And so the CD, which is 24 tracks, had Radioactive plus Reptiles in Motion. But we wanted to make sure that that Reptiles had its own release, and so that's why we put it out as a standalone.
Right. And I mean, I'll tell you, so the way I found Roger was through that EP with the Reducers. And then, again, I'm following on social media, Facebook, and this had come out within the last year and a half, give or take. And I said, well, if it's put out by Rave On, it's got to be good. And I dig the EP. Blind Buy picked it was that one and Radioactive. It was like again, at some ridiculously low price,
a reasonable price. I mean,
listen, I think it was ridiculously fair.
That's the goal all along.
2 great albums, and so it comes in the mail, and I probably put on the first one first. The Radioactive, and was like, oh yeah, this is great. And then put on the, what we'll call the reissue, Reptiles in Motion, and was equally blown away. And it's just, you hit the nail on it,
Oh, I'm glad you like. Look, it honestly, it all comes out of listening to records and record collecting, because, again, I'm going back to this radio station where I'm surrounded by more records than I could possibly ever, dream of having. And that Radioactive record was considered another local LP. And I'm looking at the back of it and I'm going, oh, G.E. Smith. Because G.E. Smith by that time had his name had started to come up with Hall & Oates. And so we knew it a little bit, but that didn't really have a lot of cachet in my world. But I put on the record, and I first heard, and the song I heard that really jumped out at me was Stop and Go. And I thought, wait a second, I know this song. And I'm convinced, back when I was listening to radio in high school, that I think Scott Muni had a show called Things from England. On
NEW.
NEW. And Stop and Go was a single in 1978 in the UK. And my guess is that somehow the UK 45 ended up back in New York, and he went, here's something from Roger C. Reale on the London Records label. And I heard it. And if a song hits me, it sticks.
Yeah.
It never goes away. And so I heard it, and I went, okay, well, I'm going to listen to the rest of it. And so that record just stuck with me. And, you could find copies pretty easily, and you still can, not an especially rare record. So for years, and eventually I met Roger through the Reducers, but in a very casual way. I did not know him very well. And we had recorded that album Shinola, as it turns out, at the same studio that he had recorded Radioactive. At some point, when we were talking about putting out other people's music on Rave On, the idea of, well, what? We know those people over at that studio. Let's see if we can figure it out. And it never happened. And it didn't happen. And at the time, I didn't even know that there was an unreleased album in the can.
Right.
And when I found out that there was an unreleased album in the can, I had no idea that it was Mick Ronson on guitar. And so as I got to know Roger a little bit more, all these things kind of came together, and we figured out a way a few years ago for Roger to not only for us to not only get the tapes, but for Roger to get the ownership of his songs and his tapes back. And that was the key to getting this reissued together. And that's probably the thing I'm most proud of in this process, is that Whereas Roger's songs, and they were great songs, were not his. He just didn't know. He just didn't have them. He didn't own them.
Right.
And these tapes were just sitting on a shelf doing nothing for anybody. And just as I think sealed records are sad records, this stuff shouldn't stay on a shelf. People should be able to hear it. And
Right.
that's really what I was working on getting done here. Very proud of that release. The collection and Reptiles, great records. If you're a power pop person, or again, if you like the producers, you're gonna like them. But Roger's it's a different animal.
It's different, but it's in the same, it's on the same tree, different fruits on the same tree. I mean, it's just as good. It's just as poppy and it's there. It's got if you're into the producers, you will like Roger C. Reale.
Certainly, and vice versa. I
Yeah.
would say.
Yeah. So now you got a nice wall of those are real. I'm assuming they're not the cardboard.
Yeah, it's not that. We were joking before we started that it's the cardboard cutout that you sell for DJs on you see in Facebook ads.
so I mean, what do you got there? Like, what
it's mostly rock and roll.
Mm-hmm.
It's mostly rock and roll, but sorry, Mike is slipping there. It's mostly rock and roll, and that's what I've been listening to mostly since I was a little kid. I've been listening and buying records since I was a very little kid, and I still have most of them, not all of them, but most of them, and I listen to them every day.
Now, all right. So, rock and roll is a broad category. Let's dig a little deeper here. What are we talking? Stones? We talking? Old, Little Richard? What is rock and roll to you?
Rock and roll to me is, let's say it's starting with the 50s with let's start with Chuck Berry. So okay. I generally like to hear Chuck Berry in my rock and roll.
Okay.
in the bands that I listen to. So the two bands we've talked about so far, Reducers and Roger C. Reale. Yeah, there's plenty of Chuck Berry in there.
Yeah.
But let me think, my first obsession, like I've got to hear every record, is probably Elton John in the early 70s when I was a kid. And I stopped there and then went Beatle crazy, like lots of people. So there's a pretty sizable hunk of Beatle records in there. And then, somewhere around, the punk new wave time. I didn't really get into punk when it first came out. I was a little too young to be affected by that. But I do, once new wave started popping up, once you started to see Joe Jackson and Elvis Costello's stuff coming out, I put my ear toward newer music and made sure that I didn't miss out, because I missed out on quite a bit of stuff when I shouldn't have. I just didn't know about it.
Well, you can't listen. When we were growing up, it wasn't like the kids have it today. I sound like an old man now, but even though the beard is gray, I'm not that old. But I mean, my son, who's now 20, has turned me on to more music than I would have ever known at his age. It just wasn't. When we were kids, you had to find the one other kid who had the tapes, who had the, and trade, home recorded tapes, and, oh, you got this record. Yeah, let's trade that. I want to listen to it. What's it?
Trading and borrowing records was it. I mean, I'll never forget. I was in high school and I wanted to borrow Astral Weeks from a friend of mine, my friend Peter, and he refused to lend it to me unless I also, listen to London Calling. And I was kind of Clash resistant for some reason. I wasn't into it. I said, fine, whatever, just give it to me. So he gives me Astral Weeks and London Calling. I put on Astral Weeks and I go, I don't get it. I put on London Calling, and again, that thing,
yeah,
from the first chords, and I couldn't believe what I was hearing.
That's it.
I was a complete Clash fan at that point.
Sometimes it just hits you, and it's got to be at the right moment. I remember years ago, I got the Bob Dylan Biograph set. It's a 3 CD. It was 3 CDs at that time. It's sort of like, I guess not really outtakes, but some popular stuff, some alternate takes, and some just straight up B-sides, whatever it was. And listen to it, and it just doesn't grab me. You know, I like a couple of the songs. I like Isis. It's kind of like, it was a little heavier, but it didn't hit. And maybe it was 5 years later. Don't ask me what propelled me to put this on. And it was like, wow, that's it. I mean, and I dug deep into Dylan at that point.
That kind of stuff happens to me all the time, where there's music that just doesn't hit. I can give you a list of artists that I don't get that would embarrass me.
Well, let's hear it.
Well, I'll give you one that I do get now. And I'm not the biggest jazz head, but when I first heard Thelonious Monk, I mean, I laughed. I wasn't laughing at it. I just thought it was funny sounding.
Right.
I just thought it was way out. And then in the last 5 years or so, a little longer, I mean, Thelonious Monk music just again gives me that explosion. That brain explosion. And it's also, you never know. I mean, I don't, I'll hear a song out of nowhere and all of a sudden I kind of get a little obsessed over it, and then we'll go back to other stuff from the artist or investigate that way. But it's nice to be, I don't, did you ever, I mean, I was thinking about this when I was first getting into music. It felt kind of tribal. You were into a certain kind of thing. You're into rock and roll, you're into punk, or you're into disco, or you into dance music, or you kind of had a gang.
Yeah.
Or you kind of had a thing. And I regret kind of buying into that a little bit, because I feel like I missed a lot of good stuff.
You limited you, right. But again, things were different when we were growing up. The punks listened to punk, and you weren't allowed to listen to metal. And new wave, no one listens to new wave, but I found that I started out listening to metal, and which moved to punk, which moved to new wave, which moved to alternative. And within probably a 5 to 7 year span, I'm all over the place now. I was never really into classic rock. It just wasn't, it didn't appeal to me. And I to this day, I know it. Out of everything that I have a very limited classic rock section. But it was all those other genres that spoke to me, and then once I heard the Ramones, it was like, holy I mean, where has this been? I heard them in it was about 85 ish, right around 84, probably 85, 86, somewhere around there. So I was 10 years late to the game. But the first album was the first album that I heard, just Ramones, and it was, oh my God, like, wow.
I think I was introduced to the Ramones by watching the Uncle Floyd show, because I was really into searching out UHF signals.
Yeah.
Beyond records, it was UHF, and so got into Uncle Floyd, and also, and I think I was actually a fan of the Rattlers before Mickey Lee's band, before I was a fan of the Ramones.
Interesting.
And because they were frequent guests too, so yes, Uncle Floyd influenced my musical taste.
Uncle Floyd was great. Uncle Floyd, he's got something going on now where he shows old clips, and it's sort of like a pay-per-view types thing. I think it's $5 or $10 a week, and he'll narrate and show the old clips. I like on Zoom, or he's got like his own broadcast or whatever, because you can't find Uncle Floyd on YouTube. Period. He pulls them. If someone puts it up, he yanks it off. He's very, very protective of what he's done.
Yeah, I'm aware of that. I'm aware that he's been doing pay-per-view events or or paid events, but I haven't done it. I should, and I will. I think I have a couple of, he did issue a couple of VHS tapes in the past. I have those. So
I have a couple of, a couple of Uncle Floyd things floating around this hard drive here, but
I've got the Uncle Floyd record, the LP in there.
I saw that.
It's pretty good.
I saw it once and didn't get it and regret it. That's something that like a regret that I it was probably cheap enough, but the day that I saw it, I probably spent, a significant amount. It was probably at a record fair and spent a significant amount of money already. And do I really need this? It's just a novelty record. I don't need it. And wound up not getting it as opposed to like this latest novelty record here.
Well, let's have a look.
Ravine.
Wow.
I mean, for some reason, I like Hypnosis records. I don't listen to them, and I like Stop Smoking records, and like this one here, I had picked up another Stop Smoking record. Stop smoking without even trying, or without using whatever it is. And I mean, I've been on and off cigarettes for 30 years. Now I've been off for about 6, and I put on that record. He's convincing you not to smoke by reminding you how much you love cigarettes. And I'm listening to this and I'm like, I got to shut this off because I love cigarettes. What if I start smoking listening to a non-smoking record? So I did the same thing with that one. I put it on. I'm like, I got to shut this off. It's reminding me of how good cigarettes are.
Opposite effect.
Opposite effect. It's crazy.
Yeah, well, maybe that record should be sealed.
Well, no, I mean, it's too late now.
Cat's out.
But yeah, that Uncle Floyd record. I should.
There are some Uncle Floyd 45s that I don't have. In fact, I think all of them. So that's after we're done. I'm going to go to Discogs and add to want list.
Now, what is he doing on those records? Is it like skits from the show or?
They're mostly songs. I haven't listened to it in a while, but I think they're mostly songs that were featured at some point on the show. Maybe a little bit of skit work, but not too much.
I saw him live in Staten Island. This is about 3 summers ago, and he was great. It was at this I don't know what it was, some sort of Catholic church type thing, like a carnival, and I went with a group of friends. And he's playing the keyboard and singing. He's still funny as hell. I mean, if you're into that,
I saw a show of his at the Bottom Line, maybe one of the last ones he did there. But this has to be in the let's say in the 2000s or the early. It was anyway. He had everybody on the floor in stitches.
Yeah,
we were. It was such a funny. He's such a funny performer.
He's quick and
hard to believe.
And he was involved with the carnivals as a young kid, so he's with it. He's hip.
That I wish him well. Let's have an Uncle Floyd resurgence, please.
Oh, absolutely. Well, let's hope. But no Oogie. He doesn't do Oogie anymore. So no Oogie. But all right, let's go back to records here because this is what we're talking. I mean, then again, I listen. All roads are always good.
I'm not, classic rock is, I mean, I don't know what you think of as classic rock. That's never been my thing either. And I don't think I own a Led Zeppelin album. I don't think I have any Led Zeppelin on vinyl. So there are some major gaps.
See, now, but what's interesting now, I probably have 3 or 4 Zeppelin. My guess is probably 70s or 80s, issues. Certainly nothing that I've bought recently, and they're not original pressings. But the bands that sort of were influenced by Zeppelin, I like that proto metal.
Mm-hmm.
You listen to like Leafhound, it's Zeppelin worship. I mean, it's all that stuff. But Zeppelin, I mean, I dig it. I like it. But it's not something that I'm going to put on. I don't have any Pink Floyd. It's just not, the early stuff, the Syd Barrett stuff. I've tried. I find it boring.
There used to be a time, and this goes back to the faction, or the faction point that I was making, is that I used to say, "Oh, I hate that band." like, oh, that band sucks, or I don't do that anymore at all. I have no room in my life for hating any band. I might not get the band.
Exactly.
I don't hate music. I just
Right.
don't.
It's
And
just not your thing.
I don't get it. And that's not to say at some point I might go Led Zeppelin crazy.
Right.
It's
Right.
possible. All of this stuff is possible. I don't really know, and I don't worry about it. And if when something hits me, it hits me, and then I go for it, and then I listen to everything I can.
Yeah, and that's the way it works. It's the it wraps its tentacles around you, and now it's like I need everything. Like XTC was a fairly recent find of my find. I mean, they've been around forever, but I got a stack of records from a friend of mine, and English Settlement was in there, the 2 LP UK set, and I put it on. And was like, wow. I mean, this was.
That's a stunning record.
Yeah. And I'm like, if everything else is as good as that, this band, why have I never? I knew, Dear God and Mayor of Simpleton, like the mid late '80s hits, but you dig deep and it's like, wow. I mean, the
Yeah.
first couple,
Oh no! I mean, XTC was. I got into them around the Drums and Wires time, and so I was. My ear was on them, and I was a fan. And then especially when Skylarkin came out, and I was a pretty big fan of theirs by then. But Skylarkin just again blew my mind.
Yeah.
How great it was, and I'm a big XTC fan, and the rewards are great, but they're a band that you can't really pin them down by one record, because they really made a point of having some kind of evolution about them. So the early XTC is not going to sound anything like late XTC, and let's not forget the Dukes of Stratosphere.
Right.
If their psychedelic alter egos.
That one of those Dukes of Stratosphere records was in that pile for my friend. And it's just psychedelic record. I mean, you'd think that you were listening to a 60s psych record.
They nailed it.
Yeah. Oh, they absolutely nailed it. Yeah. Yeah. So good. I mean, just everything about the song structures, the creativity, the lyrics, I mean, like you said, the first couple of records kind of, punky, post-punky, but then they've developed really their own totally unique style.
Always, they always kind of hooked me in because they put out great B-sides. So I was the kind of guy that like, well, wait, there's a B-side that's not on the record, that's not on the album. I gotta hear that at the very least. So they had me in their B-side tentacles for many years.
And then they released all those B-sides.
Well, that happens a lot. There's a much later band, Sugar.
Oh,
Sugar was great about B-side. They would put out all CD singles a lot, and they would have 2 or 3 non-album songs on their or live things. And I just bought every single one of them. I still have them, of course, but then of course they put out a compilation. These songs are mine, and you're letting everybody.
And now, have you been buying the Bob Mould retrospective box sets?
I haven't been able to do it. I bought a lot of those LPs as they came out. I don't have all of them, but I have most of them, and that's what I got. I can't. I was into box sets when they started coming out as CDs. The early, CD box sets seemed like a really impressive way to own an entire catalog really quickly and to get to know an artist in a very deep way. But I don't do that anymore. I can't do it. I feel it's just kind of gone berserk.
It has
in the last few years.
I picked up the first 2, and I think there's 4 or 5 altogether, and I can't do the next few installments. It's just the first one, was probably more sentimental than anything else, because it was Workbook, Black Sheets of Rain, and then all the Sugar stuff. And that stuff is great. And I didn't have it on vinyl. So, and I don't have Black Sheets of Rain on vinyl. So, okay, let's pick this one up. And then the second one, I kind of got probably ahead of myself and ordered it and regretted it. but because that's kind of where he moves into like the electronic stuff.
Mhm.
And I've tried countless times and I still can't get into it.
You don't have to,
Yeah.
and don't feel bad about it.
Yeah. It's
You can't.
just,
You can. The box sets sometimes just strike me as. I mean, I listen to music a lot, but there's no way that I would listen to all of that. Every one of those records in order and with the concentration, and it's for one artist listening to all that stuff so quickly.
right.
Um,
Right.
it just wouldn't. The music is always really what is happening in my head.
Hmm.
I mean, I love records and I love having the record, but the record is about the album is about the music and about whether or not I care about it. And that's where that emotional connection is. And that's, whether or not you're going to keep a record or not, or get rid of it. And when I say get rid of it, I mean, it goes into the corner. It doesn't actually go out of the house.
All right. So you're one of those too. Once it's in the house, it's like a roach motel. Remember those?
I'm getting better at it. I mean, I've got some, I can tell you a story. You even pulled it. I was living in a really, really tiny apartment on East 11th Street between A and B in this is the 2000s, and my place is overrun by records and gear and all this stuff. And my girlfriend has just had enough at the time. She said, you got to get rid of some stuff. And I look at it and I go, you're right. I got to get rid of stuff. And so I put a crate of records together and I put them downstairs, and I take them downstairs and I bring them into the hallway, and they're going to go into the trash area. And I'm very proud of myself. And so we go out at night, and I'm thinking to myself, I've got to get that copy of Latvian Dance Party back. I've got to get that copy of Latvian Dance Party back. And we're out, and she sees this look of concern on my face, and she's like, "What's wrong?" I was like, "I put Latvian Dance Party in that bin, and I got to get it back." And so we got back at night, and where is it? It's got to be up. And I got it back.
And there's Latvian Dance Party.
There's
Wow.
Latvian Dance Party. Now, why would I'm not Latvian, and I don't know how to do any Latvian dances. This record was given to me in a batch of records that I got from a really good friend of my mother's, and she was Latvian. And the idea, and I kind of associate this record with her, really, really, sweet lady, very supportive. And that's what we do with records, is we attach people and memories to them.
Mm-hmm.
And that means something. And, have I listened to the record? Yeah, a few times. It's got a peppy beat, but it's there, and it's not going anywhere, and it's not leaving the house.
Right. And so at this point,
that's the only record I've shown in this Zoom, by the way, is Latvian.
I mean, if you want to show more, by all means, but it's true that we do associate memories. I mean, I bet you if I asked you where you got 85% of the records in back, you remember the store, you remember the day, you remember who you were with. That's, I guess, as collectors, what we, it's how we associate these experiences.
Absolutely.
And it's great.
Absolutely. No, I mean, they're, and usually they're good memories. I mean, there's, if the record makes you happy, that's good. I mean, it doesn't always work out that way, but yeah, these things stay with me because they make me feel good. And they make me feel good about what happened in the past, and sharing it with other people too. I mean, that's a huge part of, I haven't been able to do it for a long time, but having someone over and going, "Oh, you've got to hear this song. You got to hear this record. You got to hear this record."
Right.
It's a great thrill. I mean, that's what kept me going for a long, long time, was just sharing songs I loved with people. That was it.
Yeah.
That was it.
I mean, that's certainly, when you were on the radio, that's what you're doing to a mass. I mean, you don't know what their reactions are necessarily. They're not in front of you saying, oh my God, this is great. Or, oh, how do you listen to this? But you're putting it out there.
It's really an important thing, I think, for people to understand, is that, this is how good stuff is spread, is, on whatever level. I mean, Rave On Records is not reaching a lot of people, but
Well,
it's reaching
hopefully it'll reach the 100 that watch this show.
okay, great. But the point is that, you know, you start with people around you who are talented and say, you know, you're talented, you know, more people should know about you. I'm going to help you out. I'm going to play you on the radio. I'm going to put your record out, or I'm going to share your YouTube video, or whatever it is. I mean, you start with people, you know, who are, and work out that way. I mean, that's how good things happen.
What's a record that you have that you love that, you know, if you see, you will buy multiple copies and just give
Ooh.
away?
I did that with the Bash and Pop CD, with Tommy Stinson's solo effort. Record blew me away. It was so good, and that was one of these records that seemed to go straight into cutout bins.
Yeah,
You could
that was like
find
99 cents everywhere.
everywhere. There's no way, and I would just pick them up and say, "Oh, this is a great record, great record, great record." Another record that was like that at the time. Remember Dan Zanes from Dan Zanes had a solo album out. This is before he started doing kids music.
No,
Way before. This is what was his band? I'm having I can't remember his band's name. Boston band. Anyhow, he put out a great record called Cool Down Time. Another produced by Mitchell Froom, and Mitchell Froom plays on it. Really, really unusual record. Every single cutout bin. I would you know, always buy copies and get it to people. But yeah, you never know. You never know. You gotta spread it. There's a couple. Maybe
like
not that well.
I've found Reducers records, you know, for inexpensive, and I've picked those up, and it's like, you got to listen to this. You know, I picked them all off my daughter at some point. I'm like, all right, listen, just put this on. You will dig it. You'll like it, and she does.
Yeah, I saw Amanda Schutzman.
Yeah. Well, she was at Needle and Groove, and I'm flipping through, and I'm like, you got this. I said, stop. Just whatever's on now, just put this on. You're gonna love it. And all right, she put it on. She's like, yeah, this is
that's
good.
Great. That's great.
It's like I was mentioning last week, Mink DeVille's first album. That's one that you see for, you know, anywhere from $2 to $5, maybe $6, and I'll pick it up and just like, you need to listen to this. Everyone needs to listen to that record.
You know, I think a great resource in any record store are the bins that are on the floor. When you're with a friend who's maybe getting into music, the $2 and $3 bins.
Yeah,
there's always great stuff in there. And they're in there because there are a lot of them. Doesn't make them bad records, and they're cheap, not because they're bad records, but they're just a lot of them. You know, either the record company thought it was going to be a huge hit and it wasn't, so there are just a lot of copies. But
you can find there is such great music out there for, you know, under $5. I mean, Emerson, Lake and Palmer, you know, might not be your thing, I'm guessing, right?
Not my thing.
Not a whole lot of Chuck Berry and ELP. Not much. But that's a band where you can pretty much get their entire oeuvre for, you know, under $5. And it blows me away. You know, it's just it's heavy. I'm not much into prog. I you know, hot and cold with it, but that's a prog band that just for some reason, again, just resonates with me. It's, I guess, kind of on the heavier end of things. You know,
well, you should actually talk to Roger one of these days, because Roger's a big record collector, big into prog, big into all sorts of stuff you would never expect.
Well,
and he's tried to throw some of it at me, and you know, my eyes glaze over, and
it's not for everyone. I mean, it really is totally not for everyone. I can dig some things, and some things are just, I don't get, you know.
It's all right.
Like
maybe someday.
Like a
I'll
couple
put on
of
my
years.
prog glasses.
Right. You know, a few years back, I saw it was a prog tour. So it was Carl Palmer from ELP. Rundgren played at the center slot, and then it was some incarnation of Yes. And I saw him at the Coney Island Amphitheater. I had free tickets, so whatever. But Carl Palmer was great. You know, he was drumming, was playing with two guys probably in their 20s, guitar and bass, and they were tight. It sounded great. Rundgren blew me away. Now, prior to this point, I knew nothing of Rundgren. I knew that he produced the Dolls record, and I knew that he did I Don't Want to Work, and that was basically it. And he blew me away. And when I wound up, again, his stuff is $3, $3 for a record. These records are gold.
They're great.
They're so good. I mean,
they're different. Again, they're different. They're all different.
Every record's different. And listen, not everyone's a home run. Not every song on everyone's a home run, but you will certainly find something on every record that's worth it. And
you're bringing up a really great point, is that not everything has to be completely great. And that's one of the great things about finding records cheap. And I'm a little bit of a cheapskate when it comes to records. I just don't buy super expensive records. It's not fun for me, and I don't feel a sense of I don't feel like I got anything special out of paying the big price. I like finding records that have names that are familiar to me on the credits, that I go, how did this happen? Picking them up and listening and seeing what happens. To me, it's about discovery and about fishing things out. And I found some, amazing things just, for the cover or for the attitude. I'll give you, I did pull.
I got you talk, and I'm going to pull. Oh, here. Okay. Oh, look at that. All right.
So here's one. So I was back from school, and I was staying over with my parents at a break, and I found out that a store had opened up on Main Street in Flushing, and it was a store that was just from the way you walked into the back, it was all cutouts of like terrible stuff, really, really, nothing good. And I spent an hour in there, and there's nothing good in here. And then I come across two records, and one was, the first one I saw, it was How to Blow Your Mind and Have a Psychedelic Freak Out Party on the Audio Fidelity label. Okay, I'll take that.
Yeah.
And then the other one I got was this, and I took it for the cover. And so this is the Shakers, Break It All.
Gee, they look a lot like the Beatles.
They look a little bit like the Beatles. And so, oh, look at this goof record. Oh, it's, they think they're the Beatles. And, you go to the back cover, they're sitting on each other's knees, and you read about it, and they're from Montevideo. They're from Uruguay. And I go, this is going to be good. This is going to be great. So, take the record back home, put it on, listen to one track, Break It All. Like, it's great. It's hilarious. Start listening to this record. This is recently been reissued. Their entire catalog has been reissued on Wilson Records out of Spain. This is just a phenomenal classic. It is Beatle influenced, this record in particular, but they also grew, and their other records are worth picking up. Los Shakers is how they're better known. But this was, I think, $1 or $2. Now it's a pretty expensive record.
I would imagine.
But you get things for the cover, you get things for a goof, and all of a sudden your mind is blown and your life has changed because you're searching out all these other records. I ended up years ago on a work trip to Buenos Aires to do a TV shoot.
Mm-hmm.
And all of my downtime was spent going to the record stores in Buenos Aires trying to find
nice
South American issues of Los Shakers records. And they all looked at me like I was nuts. Like, those are valuable. Those are expensive. Those are very, very rare.
Huh.
They would tell me. And, well, where else was I going to find them?
Right. Well, South America.
You got to just be open.
Yeah. I picked this one up a couple of weeks ago. Norman Nardini and the Tigers.
Well, that's a cool looking cover.
All right, so that was it. It's $5. It sold me. It's either my guess a white label test press or something. And this is just straight up Pittsburgh rock and roll. You want your Chuck Berry, you got your Chuck. I mean, but you look at this and you're thinking like, yeah, it's this looks like the Clash, and I mean, damn, these guys have to be good. It's certainly not as ferocious as the Clash. It's, but it's rock solid rock and roll.
Right. It doesn't have to be. It
And
doesn't have to be the Clash. And
no,
they put out an image that says this is who we are. This is what it is. Yeah. You find records. I mean, I find myself. You always want to look for the private presses. You always want to look for stuff that someone put out because they're taking a chance on themselves.
right.
Whether
Right.
or not it's a band. And I even love comedy records. My favorite thing is to find like Borscht Belt comedians who put out records to sell at the show after,
Yeah. Yeah.
after dinner was done, after after the Viennese table or whatever it was, was over.
At the Browns and the Concord.
And yeah, or and some of it's funny. Some of the
You'll-
jokes are good.
You'll
Some you've heard elsewhere. Not people were borrowing material like crazy, but it's a great way to kind of tap into hidden history.
Oh, absolutely.
When people actually take the chance, and it's the same DIY thing that any punk band did. We won't get signed to a major label. We're gonna put it out.
Put it out ourselves.
We're gonna put it out. We're gonna send it. You send us $2, we'll send you a record.
And all those records now are through the roof.
Oh yeah.
I mean, all those hardcore records that were out in the 80s, self-produced, or small labels, hundreds and hundreds of dollars a piece now.
Yep.
So there you go.
Well, it's scarcity. That was the thing that I was talking about that I was afraid of with reducers, is that I didn't want there to be 5 copies going for $100 when I would rather there be 100 copies going for $5.
Right. And I just continue to say it. It's just pure gold. I mean, just everyone should be getting all those reducers records. But so now, when you were in Queens, did you shop at Spinoff or Breakdown on Union Turnpike?
Ooh,
that was Union.
If I did, it would have been very, very late, and I wouldn't remember the names of the stores.
Okay.
I pretty much kept to places I could walk to at the time until I started going into all the stores in West Village and the East Village and all the used shops. Taking weekend trips, or when I would take the subway home from school, I would stop and get out at 8th Street and then walk around. And I spent countless hours at Sounds on St. Mark's.
Ooh,
Sounds a healthy number of
with the big pink stickers,
pink sound stickers.
That it's now 40 years later and you can't get off.
Binky Phillips, who used to work there and is on Facebook, has put up a directions on how to get rid of the Sounds label, and it involves a hair dryer. Yeah,
interesting.
Yeah, I'll find it. Yeah, you have to heat them up, peel them off as it's being heated up, and it'll come right off. Huh. That's what he claims. I don't know if that works.
Well, we're gonna try it because
3 decades after.
I mean, at this point, it's probably cool to have a St. Mark's Sound sticker on it. So,
I suppose so.
Maybe.
But when I started getting records when I was a kid, when I was a real little kid, I think the first time I remember asking for a record was, I think I probably went to a Singer sewing shop with my mom, and they had records on the wall, and I saw Sesame Street record, and I want that record.
Right.
And then there was a King Carol that was really good. Later on, there the Wiz, and there was a Jimmy's Music World, but all the department stores also sold records too.
Yeah,
everyone sold records.
Corvettes
were everywhere.
And
the Corvettes was the best record shop in the neighborhood by far, and well stocked. That's where I would go first to buy a record. I think
there was a shop in the mid 80s in Forest Hills. It was on Austin Street. Might have been Record World, but I don't remember. And they had an insane collection of just for sale of like metal. And you wouldn't think that in Forest Hills, but then there was another shop down 100, and this shop was only open for probably less than a year. And they had it was like a hardcore store. And I mean, in the middle of Forest Hills, I didn't get it, but I picked up some really good stuff there. Unfortunately, I was buying tapes at that time. So, I had a lot of tapes that I got, not a whole lot. Those records would have been, again, through the roof. I got some records here and there, but
It was, that was the time that I really enjoyed record shops. I kind of enjoy them less now. I would rather get a record from a stoop sale or an oddball. Someone has a small stack of records and I see something I like.
yeah.
Or I like to find my records in more unexpected places.
I mean, but here in New York, it's, I mean, you're certainly not going to do as well at a Goodwill or a Salvation Army as you would, way out of New York.
I live not far from a housing works, and whoever is pricing the records has discovered Discogs and the high price, and so they're pricing their terrible records at crazy prices.
Yeah.
And that's just no fun. It's just no fun. You don't expect to go into a thrift shop and see prices that are through the roof.
No.
It's
Although I'll tell you, my daughter picked up for me, this is probably just pre-COVID, so maybe it was February of last year, at Housing Works on the one that's off like, it was a Soho around there.
Mm-hmm.
And she picked up New York Rocker. It was that newspaper.
Sure.
And I think it was the second issue for $5. And it's like, cool. Whoa,
there's a lot of good stuff in those issues.
Oh,
a lot of
gold.
great people were writing.
Yeah. Just the photos and the contests, the goofiness was great. And it was $5, good shape, really, really good shape. Folded, obviously, but even so, I think there were two of them. She got one for herself too. So
yeah, there's a lot of fun. Ira Robbins put all of Trouser Press issues online.
Yeah,
it's great,
yeah.
but it's not as much fun as going through an old issue of Trouser Press.
Well, of course not. I mean, I've got a whole bunch. If anything Ramones related, if they were mentioned on the cover in like 0.10 font, I'd have to buy the issue. Just because it's got they mention the Ramones and when they're talking about something else, and gotta have the issue. But yeah, I've got a bunch of those old Cream was also really, really good. Those are, and they're fun to go through now.
One of my favorite things is when people post gig advertisements for venues from 1981 or 82. It's happening a lot now. It's great. It's great fun to see who was playing with who. Who was the undercard, where they went.
Some of those shows are just and forget like the individual shows, but when you look at a week of what the Ritz had in like 83, oh my God.
Yeah. No, someone's been posting hurrah listings, and any of the Max's Kansas City, band listings are, they're mind blowing.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Really unbelievable. So any record shops that you do go to now that you kind of dig?
Well, I'm in Brooklyn. I go to, and I was just there the other day as Almost Ready.
Yep.
Which is good. And of course you did an interview with Jeff Ogiba.
Jeff from Brooklyn, Black Gold.
Black Gold, real nice. There's a guy outside of the Trader Joe's sometimes, Don.
Really?
And he, on Court and Atlantic, he's got always got some interesting stuff.
That's interesting.
And then it's a good neighborhood for stoop sales. So these days there are more books out there than records, but people always put records out. A lot of record hounds out here though. So you gotta get there pretty early.
I've yet to go on the other side of the BQE. I went to the Red Hook shop once. They were closed,
and that was the other place. A guy named Benny runs it. It's a pretty cool place. I was just there the other week. I got I probably have a few things here that I just picked up over there.
What'd you get?
Come on, cool shop. I don't.
Don't leave us in suspense here. It's.
What did I get? You know what? I got a John Mayall. I think I got this John Mayall record.
All right.
I pick up these. I pick these things up when I can. You never know. And they're not always great, but they're
if they're cheap enough, it doesn't matter if they're great. That's the bottom line.
It's look, you're getting records to kind of change your perspective. Listen to music. That's what listening to music does. It gives you different ideas, like reading or any good art. It's going to open your mind up. And that's at least that's the way I see it.
Exactly. And then they opened up another shop fairly recently in Industry City.
My friend Matt Milford told me about that. That is called, what is it called?
They sell like high-end stereo gear and records. I don't know what it's called, but it's a fairly new shop.
My mind, yes. And it's a really nice guy, runs it, and he is. I'm trying to remember the name of the shop, and I can't do it. I could look it up, but I'm not going to do that right now. He's stocking his store with records, and and he's buying records and he's putting stuff out, and he's asking for ideas, like how do he wants to know how people like his shop curated. So I gave him my suggestions, and he's asking everybody, and that's good. It's going to be a good place. That's
good.
Cool. That's a cool part of. It's good to have a record store in there.
And then there was one. It was a shop that's under new ownership now. I think it's in Park Slope, maybe Fifth Avenue, and it's now called Psychic Records. And again, I haven't been there. I've seen them on social media, on Instagram, and it looks like a really nice shop.
All right, I'm gonna check it out.
And then there's always Academy and Captured Tracks, and those are my go-tos when I'm in that area. Mm-hmm. Captured Tracks and Academy, and certainly Academy in the city.
Yeah.
Also.
Yeah, I'm actually probably gonna go there next week.
Yeah, Brooklyn or Manhattan?
A long time. Manhattan.
Yeah. It's they recently, during COVID, they were closed for a long while, and they reopened, and they kind of have the store, both shops, both Brooklyn and Manhattan. They sort of have the shop, probably less than half. They would let 3 people in. They've since expanded both shops just a little bit more. You get a little more, a few more people in, and but they've kind of opened up some of the stock that they didn't bring out during COVID, and it's good. I mean, during COVID was rough. It's just only online record stores and Black Gold, because they sold coffee.
Right.
So it's
I bought probably more some re-release stuff. I didn't do a whole mess of used purchases online. When something new came out, I would get it. I mean, I got the Who Sellout came in today. I was very happy.
Oh, that's the new reissue.
They did a beautiful job on it. Again, I think they went overboard on the box set version. I don't know how many CDs or how many LPs it is, but it's just something 5 CDs plus 45s, and it costs many hundreds of dollars. And I just couldn't do that. I got the 2 LP mono version. I'm very very happy with it.
Right. Well, now they're putting stuff out in multiple versions. So you'll have the 2 CD, the 2 LP, the 19 LP, the deluxe version with 32 albums and 4 CDs and a poster.
Yeah. And the poster is nice on this one. I was really kind of shocked.
Seeing I'm getting anxious of you just handling the poster. Like,
it's okay.
Like if I had that, it's beautiful. But if I had that, it would never, it would have remained in that box, and I would never have even looked at it.
Well, I'll tell you what. I took the shrink wrap off all the way, and I did end up doing something I don't normally do, which is I put it in a poly sleeve, because I stay away from poly sleeves now. But I put it in a poly sleeve just because it's too much. So I wanted to have. I didn't want the poster loose, but. I mean, I did. I'll tell you what nutty thing I do. Do you keep hype stickers? Because I keep hype stickers.
Yeah.
I have a straight razor, and I cut them off.
Well, see, I keep the entire piece of shrink wraps.
Okay, that's going too far.
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, and that's only if I have to, like I think I told the story last week where I had a fairly recent Nuggets reissue, did an event with Lenny K, asked him to sign it, and now I had to peel the shrink wrap off in front of him, and he's like,
I'm
"Well,
sure he loved it.
don't you read the liner notes?" And I'm like, "No, no." Meanwhile, he wrote the liner notes, and I'm like, as soon as I said that, I'm like, "Oh, I shouldn't have said that."
Well, Lenny was my downstairs neighbor for a few years. He
I,
was, we lived in the same house. He's good buddies with this guy, Tom Clark.
yeah,
Uh, Great musician, does a live stream every Sunday, works at 2A, big music head, the biggest, and
so
the
I met
greatest.
Tom through my friend Scott, who we were talking about before the
Right,
show.
right. Well, so Tom had this house on Flatbush Avenue, right by the entrance to the Manhattan Bridge, and the top floor opened up. Hello, Kitty. And top floor opened up, and he asked me if he knew that I lived in that crappy little apartment on 11th
Right.
Street. Said, "I've got this big space. We got a recording studio in the basement. We got."
Oh, wow.
Okay, I'll move. So I moved to the top floor, and then eventually Lenny moved underneath, and we talked about records a lot. My one great story about Lenny and records is one point I went up to him and I said, "Lenny, I'm really bored with all my 45s. I've heard them all a million times. You got anything for me to listen to?" And he goes, "Okay, I got a little something. I got something for you." So he comes and he gives me a stack of Fortune records from the Detroit record label.
Right.
These are all from their gospel series. These are all I collect their gospel 45s. And so and great, I'll listen to them all. And I ended up, digitally transferring them and making a CD for him. And I think I even put them online somewhere. If it is, I'll send you the link.
Oh, that's cool.
But yeah, it was great to have someone else's perspective, especially someone like Lenny.
Yeah. I mean,
I borrowed Lenny K's records. That's cool.
Right. That's great. It just an encyclopedia of knowledge, when it comes to music and records. And and what a soft spoken and modest and humble guy. I pull out the Nuggets record, and he's like, I can't believe it's this thing is almost 50 years old. People are still into it. And what just a sweetheart, a real sweetheart.
He's joked that record he's never had to pay for a drink because of that record.
It's true. And, I curated Nuggets. Here we go.
That record, man, that was the thing that set a lot of people off onto, hearing the Remains for the first time because you heard it on Nuggets, and then you find out that every other song by the Remains is as good. That's going to make an impression.
Where does she think she's going?
She's what is she looking? What
I don't. She's never done. No. Down.
All right. So I have a horror story for you about my old cat on 11th Street. So my cat discovered that records put together.
Oh no.
I still have a mess of them. They're kind of scattered. There's some spines that have seen the wrath of my cat Maybelline.
Now,
named after the Chuck Berry song.
I understand. There you go. I understand that it's something in the glue that the cats were attracted to. That's what I've heard. I don't know how true that is, but which is another reason that I sleeve all the records. Because, if they're, especially the older, let's say 70s issues, if they're attracted, they will just try to paw at it. And these cats, if there's a sticker anywhere, they will try to scrape that sticker off. So everything, luckily they're good around the record.
Give them the sound stickers. Let's see what they do with the sound stickers.
That would be a freaking miracle without the hair dryer. Anyway. Well, I think we're pretty good here. I mean, we've been on for quite a while. I'm kind of tired already. How about you? I can keep going.
It's I think we did good.
I certainly there's there were a lot of great nuggets in what you were talking about here. So we
I
were
don't-
talking about nuggets, but you had some really good collecting nuggets, that you shared, and it
Okay,
was
well,
great.
I appreciate you asking me to do this. As I said, when you first asked me, I said, there are a lot of collectors out there who are on a much higher level of collecting than me, but I love my records.
You
They're
also had a
everything.
great you had a great quote. I wanted to introduce you with this. When you had emailed me back, you said everything cool that I've done was because of music.
And records, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, over there, it's hard to see, but that's a poster for the Wild Weeds. The Wild Weeds were a band from, again, from Connecticut, put out a record in 1967 called No Good to Cry. Al Anderson, who would later join NRBQ, was in the band. And, I got a copy of that record and said, oh, this is great. Let me get all the other 45s. And then eventually I compiled a CD, and we put it out with Michael Shelley's label Confidential years ago. And you just kind of follow good stuff. And and if you have the opportunity to kind of step it up out of your small orbit into a slightly larger orbit, you try. That's all I've been trying to do. That's it.
And it's working. So
I hope so.
Run with it.
Yeah, and everybody else, yeah, do that with your scene.
This is advice right here. Take it, friends. All right. So speaking of friends, let me sign off and then we'll say goodbye. So, friends, if you've dug this, and I'm sure you have, because I said Richard he just threw out so many good nuggets here today. So pay attention. I hope you have been. I hope you enjoy the show. If you like it, hit like, or I guess click like or press like. Try to subscribe. You want to build those subscribers up and leave some comments, because I said this improves the metadata of what we got going on here. So it exposes this to more eyes and more people, more ears, and more people will then go and buy Reducer's records. And that's what we want. So, friends, thank you all very much for tuning in. Richard, thank you. This has been terrific. Remember, check out the Rogers C. Reale Reducer. We didn't even talk about Heap.
We didn't talk about Heap, but
all right,
if you like Roger and you like the Reducers, you'll love Heap.
You'll love Heap. There you go. So we've got the trifecta of Rave On Records bands right there. All right. So friends, I will stop recording and then we'll wrap up for a couple of minutes here. Friends, thank you all so much again. Kat, want to say goodbye? Guess not. All right. Thanks everybody, and we'll see you next time.